कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः सुष्ठुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Okay, so in the last class we not only understood awareness to be all pervasive, we understood it to be limitless. In order to make it limitless, there should be no second. If there are two, then that one thing you can't call logically limitless. Why? Because the very presence of that thing will make the other one limited. Okay, so therefore here what we say is that there are all these different names and forms, but they are not they don't enjoy the same order of reality as awareness. They are all mithya, and awareness is satyam, the independent reality. So therefore here you have two names. One name is wood, the other one is table. But in terms of reality, does it make two? No. Why? Because table and wood have what relationship? Satya Mithya relationship. While the table depends upon wood, the wood is independent of the table. So therefore, if our whole reality is on the form, then if there are 10 wooden objects, how many things we will count? 10. But when Upanishads point out that there is one underlying reality and everything is a vikara, modification, as though modification of that reality, as though, not real modification. Okay, then how many things are there? There is only one. So that means we count the forms, we take forms to be real, and we miss out the substance. When the Upanishads points out the substance, then forms no matter how many, they don't create duality. In order to understand that all that is here is wood, do you need to dismantle different shapes, table and chair or anything? Do you need to dismantle it? No. Keeping it, what do? In your own understanding, you understand, in spite of all these different forms, there is only one reality. Okay, so this is why, because otherwise, in order to arrive at Advaita, imagine if you have to destroy. This is what some of the yoga people do. They want to have thoughtlessness. They want to destroy physically mind. Because the mind means there will be a subject-object division. Okay. Here you can say, I can use my mind seeing something else and still understand non-duality. Non-duality doesn't get displaced by anything. Okay, so that means you don't have to have a particular type of experience to understand oneness. if oneness were dependent upon one particular type of that one experience and stretching that experience for rest of your life, what will happen? You'll be hooked, because mind by nature is what? Changing. So if the non-duality, for it to exist, you need to have an empty mind. So that means it becomes what? That reality becomes what? Dependent reality on what? On your mind. So people don't even understand what they are doing, and they get hooked onto that and take it all very seriously and spend years. And they spend it with a completely a mix-up which makes mind more true than that reality. Because that reality depends upon your emptiness of the mind. You inverse the whole relationship. Okay? So therefore, understanding Vedanta requires a lot of clarity, because these things which are said by the teacher, they are so misconstrued. Our teacher used to say, even if you are crystal clear, sometimes you are appalled by what the person understands. He said, like, right? And he says, imagine that if you don't make things clear, what will happen? People will all walk away with their own ideas of limitlessness. There is no clarity, only some floating concepts. Okay, so therefore, now in light of this, let's see this verse and look. We have done till what it's not an object of thinking. Then here it says it is unmanifest. So now this also needs to be refined a little bit. Okay, what it is not what the things, the objects become what? Come into manifestation and become unmanifest. In what time? Okay, 50 years ago this body was not there. Then it comes into being. So that means before it was unmanifest, now it is manifest. After 40 years or 50 years, it will become again what? Unmanifest. It will go. Anything that exists within time and space goes through this cycle of what? Manifestation and unmanifestation. It is born in time, it is sustained in time, and it becomes unmanifest at some point. So compared to you and I, what is the age of the mountains? Much, much, much longer, but it still follows that cycle. It comes into manifestation. It was unmanifest before that, and it will become what? There are so many changes which take place. Okay, even at that level. Trees. How long are, our teacher used to say, there is a tree in California, redwoods. Some of these trees are, I don't know how many, 2,000-3,000 years old. But still it follows what? Unmanifest, manifest, unmanifest. Does Atma go through this cycle? No. Because it's not in the category of what? Object. It doesn't go through this cycle of manifestation and unmanifestation. It is the only thing which is what? Always there, in which what? Different forms come into manifestation and become unmanifest. Okay, so this is what is said. So therefore, don't wait for Atma to become manifest to you. Knowledge is not some Atma will come and show itself. What will you make it? You will make it into an object. It will come and manifest in front of you. Up to now it was not manifest, then it will become manifest. It is not that. It doesn't fall in that category. It is one invariable presence which is never changing, in which as though all the changes are taking place. As though in the sense that all the object world doesn't enjoy the absolute reality, in that sense. Okay, now the next word is what? Okay, it is of endless forms. You understand that? Even though itself is independent of all forms, the forms are what? Mithya. They have what? No independent reality. So our teacher used to say that particular reality can be understood with this very simple example, and that is what? Actor and beggar. The actor in the theater is playing role of a beggar. What is the relationship? The role of beggar, can it exist without the actor? No. But is the actor becoming beggar? Makes a lot of money. Ask Shah Rukh Khan. How much money he makes by what? Playing all kinds of roles. Right? So that means, what is it? Are there two things? Is there one actor and one beggar? There is only one. And what is the relationship? While the beggar is not independent of actor, actor is what? While acting it out, is what? Independent of being the beggar. So the whole universe, that this is why you have Nataraja. Whole dance of universe is going on. Within that what? Manifestation, unmanifestation, so many things happen. Dinosaurs come, dinosaurs become extinct. Dance of universe. Then the dinosaurs go, and that gives what? Opportunity for mammals to survive. Because if the dinosaurs remained, what happened? They would just eat them up. Okay? So therefore, that event is somehow connected to your existence. Okay? So that is now so many different. So people say, yeah, so now you see science fiction, and they try to show you what the world will be, what 10 years from now. And what would it show? All people are all dressed differently. Even now we see all these Victorian people. Surya took me to one museum in France, and it was like this, women were wearing gowns, and they were like, what, pulling those gowns. Women have had this problem for a very long time, I tell you. To make it fit and make their, they were like really torturing themselves. The whole way of dressing was all what? Yeah. Okay. So compared to that, now it's very different. You don't know what fashions are, because all these fashion industry, where it will take you. You don't know. Okay. So that means the whole dance of the universe, what? In that, the magnitude of the dance is what? Huge. What is the if you were to know the entire thing in order to know Atma, you will never know Atma. It will be impossible. When will you understand everything and its connection to everything else? There is never going to be a time. But if this one reality, while all these things are going on, remains unchanging, and that reality is not some abstract reality, it is what? I. then when you use pramana, you can understand this totally and completely. Because its understanding does not depend upon what? Knowing in detail what? Every object. If it depended upon that, you will never know it. If my knowing this awareness depended upon my understanding this flower totally, of how these atoms have arranged themselves to become petal, I could be doing my PhD for rest of my life understanding only one thing, let alone everything else. By that method, you can never capture limitlessness. This is why this, this whole academic orientation is what? This whole thing is what? Research based on perception and inference. And that what? It's endless. There is no finality about anything, because after years of research, you can't understand one object totally. So what do? We apply the same principle to awareness, and we conclude, if I can't understand one object clearly, how will I ever understand what? Limitlessness of Atma. That limitlessness of Atma does not depend upon what? The detailed knowing of objects. That's why, and it is one undivided whole, and when different manifestations happen and don't happen, and which you don't even know what manifestations are going to be there, you can still say what? Whichever manifestation there is, it is going to be what? One more rearrangement of what? The same particles. It will give rise to different form. And that particle itself is what? Not a tangible entity. And that depends upon awareness. And awareness, does it depend upon that? No. You can know in totality this reality. Okay? So therefore, it is what we say, what? It is of endless forms. All the forms depend upon that. Okay? Now, here it's very important to understand there are some words which are not really describing what? The total nature of Atma. Ever auspicious. Auspicious is what? What is this whole thing? Auspicious is opposite of inauspicious, right? So now that occurs within what? The world of objects. Okay, so you have some beliefs about what is auspicious and what is not auspicious. My mom used to always tell me that before you go out, and if you've taken the name of food, it is inauspicious. So you always have to drink water and then you have to go. Okay, so that means that they both, this auspicious and inauspicious, what? They are opposites. So if you say Atma is only auspicious, what is the source of inauspicious? It has to be something else. So therefore, it cannot be what? Either auspicious or inauspicious. It is one reality which is what? Free from both and sustain both. Itself, you can't give any attributes, because the minute you say it is one attribute, what are you doing? You are saying it is not all the other attributes. So all the other attributes, then if they are independent of this, then what? It doesn't become limitless. Okay, so therefore the real way of understanding it is what? Neither it is auspicious nor it is inauspicious. In it, what? Both the concepts exist, free from both. Reality of Atma, attributeless reality. Okay, so therefore what? Now peaceful. Peaceful is also again relative word or absolute word? Relative word. Peaceful means what? Opposite of agitation. So that's why what happens is, if the teachers don't point out, and if they just say what Atma is peaceful and move on, what will happen? Because you will feel, you will think that only when what? The mind is peaceful, Atma is there. When the mind is agitated, what happens? You lost Atma. Right? Atma never gets lost. Thank God. Right? So that means peaceful is a disposition of what? Mind. And the opposite of peacefulness is what? Agitation. And Atma is what? Free from both. But in order to understand that, we just use science a little bit, and it is true. You can see how it is true, because all these different sensations that occur are a result of what? Some electrical connections, the neurons combining and giving you experiences of emotions, different emotions. When you have the experience of peacefulness, is your cell becoming, is the neuron becoming peaceful? No. The same neuron, when it rearranges, it will give you what? Agitation. So while all these sensations are going on, neurons are what? They are free from those attributes, but they combine together to produce that given experience. Okay, so Atma is what? Neither peaceful nor agitated. It makes what? Both these possible. Itself is what? Free from it. So that means, if you have really understood Vedanta, then even that level of little bit of agitation at the level of mind will not displace your knowledge. Why will it not displace your knowledge? Because it's knowledge. The knowledge is what? While all these things are happening at the level of Sukshma Sharira, Atma is already free. Okay. By that knowledge, the quality of your mind will improve. And in order to get this knowledge, you need to work on your Antahkarana. There is no doubt about it. But you can't equate the two. Okay, so peacefulness is a state of mind. We are not talking about, when we talk about Atma, we are not talking about state of mind. If Atma depended upon your state of mind, you are making Atma so frivolous without knowing it. Right? So that is immortal. We saw that it is what? Not subject to birth and death. Origin of all creation, we saw that, right? Every time, space and objects come from Atma, are sustained by Atma and go back to Atma. Okay, without beginning, middle and end. As I said, objects have what? Beginning, middle and end. Now Atma has beginning, middle and end? No. Okay, and it is what? Only one. because everything else is mithya. It is what? All pervading. There is no location. Time wise limitless, space wise limitless, object wise limitless. Okay, and it is in the form of consciousness. Chit. Chit Swarupa. It is formless. Now this is also very funny because it says it's wonderful. How can it be can it be wonderful? Adbhutam means it is amazing that this reality is your nature and you have spent lifetimes not knowing it. That's a wonder. Okay, so that is the wonder. It's not that it's wonderful or anything. It is a wonder. Okay, now the whole question, when I did this, now verse 7, now when I did this whole collapsing of the universe to show that it is mithya, I ended at what concept? By concept, what do I mean? That we have the orientation of everything, what the world as being tangible, something tangible. What is the reality? There is no real tangibility about anything. Okay, but so that means now I need to refine it further in order for Vedanta to be complete. This is why we say it is step by step leading. You think that you have understood everything, but a big portion of Vedanta is still left. Okay, and that is the understanding of Ishvara. Okay, so verse 7, it talks about what? Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram Prabhum Trilochanam Neelakantham Prashantam Dhyatva Munir Gacchati Bhuta Yonim Samasta Sakshim Tamasaf Parastat. See, now this Upanishad is all very poetic. It uses all, so if you start taking this and if you just start building on this, you will go on a tangent. Okay, so it says what that there is one thing which is what? Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram. Okay, so therefore this whole thing reducing to intangibility, but in order for that something which is not even there to manifest as Jagat, it's not just some random manifestation. It requires what? As Priya said, a lot of intelligence. Intelligence of the magnitude that you cannot even imagine. Okay, in order for this one flower to be created, how many, what you have to have all these what different parts constituting of what? Other parts, and then other parts and other parts. So here you have one object, one nama, and within this one nama there are how many other names? Infinite other names. Namni, namani. Where it seems like one, if you take it at the level of cells, how many cells? Millions of cells. Now those cells have to become what? Each part, and that part has to combine with another part, and that has to combine with this part, and you try to do it. It's impossible. Okay, so you come in the universe where all this is already designed. You haven't designed anything. This is an intelligent creation. There is an intelligence there. From something which is totally, you can't even give any tangibility to it, what it manifests as what those minutest particles, they arrange themselves, and at every increasing level of arrangement they gain attributes. And they again combine, those attributes combine and gain further attributes. So this is why it becomes what? An intelligent creation. Mithya does not mean it is what? Just you can afford to ignore it. If you don't understand the whole working of Mithya Jagat and the presence of that intelligence, if you miss it, your Vedanta is not complete. Why can't you afford to miss that intelligence? Because it is there. So if you are interested in reality, you can't miss it. And you also need to know what is the relationship of this awareness or chit with that intelligence. You need to ask this question, without which your understanding of reality is highly partial. Okay, now this intelligence is so intelligent that you have another object which is what? The same flower, but at the same time, and the atoms and particles are organized in pretty much same way, but at the same time there is what? There is no identical, one object is never identical to the other. So that means what? That there has to be some commonality, and at the same time there has to be what? Some uniqueness. There is no one form which gets repeated. How long is the universe? How old is the universe? Billions of years, and not one form is identically repeated. They have all this new technology that they come up with, which is cloning and all that. Right? But the original design is what? Each one is unique. Now the same atoms and particles organize to become what? This flower. And each different part, it has to become, or this is like a Shiva Linga here, and this is what? That like. So that means there is what we call Sajatiya Bheda, Vijatiya Bheda, and Swagataha Bheda. Whole Jagat. What is Sajatiya Bheda? Cow. Or a cow is what? One jati, one class. In that one class of cow, there are infinite varieties. You have Jersey cow, you have Deshi cow. There is a whole big project of what? This, Desi cow, but there's Gir cow. They are supposed to be very good for you. The milk that they give, you can do research. They say it is highly digestible. Okay, So therefore, you have all these different varieties. Each one is different. Even within one jati, there are what? Infinite varieties. Then there is Vijatiya Bheda. What is Vijatiya Bheda? Cow is different from a dog. Different jati. The characteristics of cow are very different. The faculties are very different. Dog faculty is what? Very different. Designed differently. All what? Work of intelligence. Each part put together in connection with all the other parts to create a form which is what? With different programming. The dogs they use for sniffing because they have very sharp smell sense. In this verse they talk about what? Garuda. Garuda is eagle. Eagle is able to do what? Fly very high. And what? From this very height they can spot what? Yeah, the prey. They'll come down and they'll go up. Whole design. Vijatiya Bheda. Okay, dog is different from cat. Cat is different from a bird. Bird is different from human being. All what? Permutations and combination of what? The same atoms and particles. But the whole thing is nothing but knowledge. Intelligence. Okay? Human being. Very different. This is why they say, coming as a human being, you have a very special type of Sukshma Sharira. The other species which are alive, they also have Sukshma Sharira. Cow has inference, cow has perception. So in Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said that when you go in front of a cow with a stick, what will the cow do? Run away. What is the perception? Stick and raised stick. What is the inference? I'm going to be hurt, let me run away. That's why you can't slaughter cows, because you interfere with right of cow to live. Nobody wants to die. You have no right to take away life of anybody. You are going against the natural design. Okay, so therefore there is an inference which makes the cow what? Want to run away. Nobody wants to be hurt. And if you go to a cow with a nice handful of grass, what will the cow do? And smile, what will the cow do? It will come to you and it will what? Eat the grass. So therefore the sukshma of every animal is capable of what? Some basic perception and inference also. They are intelligent, they exhibit a lot of intelligence. But a cow doesn't go to the US for a PhD at Harvard. Right? So that means their intelligence. So our teacher used to say, because at that time, he's a Canadian, so there is an inherent rivalry between the US. So no, okay. So our teacher used to say that what the cows don't stand, because at that time, in 80s and 90s, all the Indians would want to go to the US. So outside US embassy there will be long line. So he says a cow doesn't queue up in front of the embassy to go to the US. Huh? Yes, with IIT. Doesn't go to IIT. IIT is Indian Institute of Technology. Doesn't go to the US. Doesn't have just basic perception and inference. Whereas the human mind is not meant to be. Many of us spend our life with only basic perception and basic inference. We end our capacity there. We don't go forward. This is why they say that if you've come in a human form where you're endowed with a Sukshma Sharira, which is an extremely sophisticated Sukshma Sharira, and you waste it away and you leave this world by not figuring out this reality, you have wasted a very precious human birth. Iha chet na avedati mahati vinashti. It's a waste of human birth. Okay, there was this, Surya always makes me see all these amazing videos. So there was one video he showed me of. So he showed me one video of this physicist called Ramachandran, and all those physicists are in California. All the Indian physicists are all there. All the top brains are all there. Right? And he was holding this human brain in his hand, and he says, this 2 or 3 pound instrument, it is an amazing gift. It can figure out sitting here, how many discoveries we have made. How many discoveries we have made. And how it has changed our lives, fundamentally. 100 years. You look at, people always talk about as though right now are the worst times that the world has ever experienced. This is our perception. Because we don't understand anything and we just grapple in darkness, so everything becomes overwhelming. But if you really look at how many discoveries have changed our lives so fundamentally, it's not just categorically bad. All this human being is capable of. Thinking about things, discovering, okay, and all these different theories get revised. So many theories of from Newton to Einstein, everything keeps getting revised. Why? Because you're looking and we are becoming closer and closer to how the universe is. That continuous search and capacity to unravel some of the things is given to human mind. A human mind is also capable of having what we call the self-reflexive capacity. What does it mean? It not only looks at the universe and engages in the universe, it also tells that human brain also creates a self-image. It looks at oneself as participating in the universe. It has notions, it creates a self-image. That I am, everything is there is a faculty which is given, and this I want to talk about because this is another place where so much mistake is done. Okay, there is this faculty which is given in our Antakarana. In addition to mind, which is emotions, there is the decision making capacity, doership, enjoyship. There is one thing which is what? Everything gets centralized as what? Ahankara. Ahankara is I sense. Yes. Aham is I and Kara is what? Sense of I. So that means when you look at some situations, okay, not only you have some emotions, what do? You say, I am sad. That is what? A thought. And it's a variable thought. Okay, so that means all the different thoughts that are constantly changing get imputed onto what? One what? As though central entity, which is what? Your I sense. So when there are changing emotions, what do you say? There is I am sad, I am happy, I am whatever, right? I am jealous, I am angry, I am fearful. All this is what your I thought. There is an I thought which gets mixed up with what? Which gets connected, not mixed up, connected with what? Your emotions. Then you go to school and you what? Learn, you use, when you study theorems, when you study mathematics, all these kids in these villages we asked, they all study math, physics, chemistry. It's quite amazing. Okay, this is what faculty are you using? Your cognitive capacity. So when you have a sharp cognitive capacity, you tell yourself what? I am intelligent. So that means even your cognitive capacity gets connected with your I sense. Then all your memories, which are just frames, they also get connected with what? Your I sense. So therefore, even though this I sense is very fluid, it assumes what? A very solid, as though what? Entity. It becomes like a solid entity. Do you need to destroy this faculty? No. All you need to do is what? Just like every other faculty, this is also one of the things, one of the functions of Antakarna. When you understand that, you don't need to destroy anything. Mithya doesn't have to be destroyed to come to Satyam. Why? Because Satyam is never affected by Mithya. It's a fluid entity. It seems like a solid entity. When you understand that it's only a fluid entity, then what? Then every thought is coming and going, and I am that awareness. And the thought is what? Is it independent? Totally independent of awareness? It's mithya. What does it mean? Thought is a form. What is the content of that thought? Can any thought exist without awareness? No. But awareness is independently existing. So the thought is mithya and awareness is the satya. The thought never displaces awareness. So therefore, this whole ahankara, you don't need to annihilate, you don't need to destroy, you only have to understand it as what? Mithya. Okay, so therefore, this whole human design, which is giving a very sophisticated, what? Sophisticated Sukshma Sharira, which not only is capable of looking into the universe and figuring out many things, because of this self-reflexive capacity, it also has what? Capacity to make sense or give some image of oneself. This is a blessing and it is a curse. Because our teacher used to say,
where does intuition come in this?
yeah, intuition. I will talk about it in the yeah, I will talk in the satsang. I will talk. Yeah. In this particular understanding, right? Huh? Yeah. So that means a cow, a dark cow, doesn't suffer from low self-esteem. Right? But you ask her, all the Indians who are in South India, they must be fascinated by you. Right? Why? Yeah, see, they just come and do this to her. Right? What does it mean? That when you see that white, it's not just white, what? It creates what? It's self-image. I'm no good. Because if I think that white is good, then when I'm not white, what will happen? I will keep loading my eye with all kinds of complexes. Those complexes, are they good or bad? Depends. Wonderful. Why it depends? Because you can't stand those complexes. It impels you to what? Find answers. It makes you move forward in life. If you did not have this self-image, what will happen? You will just keep reacting, responding, and then what? You're gone. But the self-image is the one which what is a blessing and it is a curse. It's a curse because if you don't give yourself right messages, what will happen? You're loaded. It is interesting sometimes how people suffer from low self-esteem. With every event that happens, there is what we call inner chatter. You keep on telling yourself, you didn't do it right. You're no good. Everybody else may say you're really good, but what? You may think that you're no good. Or what? You think you're the king, right? You control everything. You're CEO of a company. And you are made to think what? You are a king.
Reality checks in.
Yes, exactly, right? So that means what? That you feel you're in control. You can feel for a moment, but what? The reality looms large, and one day it has to correct. Some people take the clues and correct. Some people stay within that paradigm forever. But sometimes it becomes so distorted that you seek help. You can't live with that self-created picture. It impels you to come to Vedanta, to look for solution. Our teacher used to say that don't think all the people who come to Vedanta, they all want to know the final reality and all that. Most of the people come to what? There is so much suffering with the way they have understood the world and how they have loaded that eye with all the different stories that they have told. They cannot stand it. They have to look for something to get out of it all. Okay, so that very suffering impels them to come to this teaching. Can you say the suffering is bad? No. That's why his answer is right. It depends. What you do with that suffering is going to decide how you're living your life, intelligently or unintelligently. Okay, so that means this whole faculty is what? It is part of, did you create all these, this Sukshma Sharira with all these different faculties and capabilities? If I ask you, what are the different parts in your brain? Will you be able to give all the names of that, all the parts which are in your brain? You don't even know. The medical, we have some medical doctors, and these medical doctors, they say the toughest course they study when they go to medical school is anatomy. Just to remember different parts of the body is a huge job. So how these atoms and particles combine themselves to make into this human body, which is distinct from what all the other species, and then each human range is common, but again, like every other species, each human being is unique. The enormity of intelligence that is required for the whole design to come about, where each form comes into being, itself is what? Just nothing. Is this intelligence only only at the level of atoms and particles, and it organizes? Is it only there? No. Where is it? At every level. It is there where it combines the different particles and makes it into atoms. Then atoms it organizes and makes it into molecules. Then it organizes there to make it into cells. Then the cells are organized to make different organs. Even the human body, the cells. So our teacher used to tell us, Swamiji, okay, he wanted to do stem cell therapy. So he used to use everything in making us understand Vedanta. So he used to look into our eyes and explain. He will forget about his suffering, but he will explain how the whole system works. He used to take it is that whole thing of seeing the presence of intelligence. It's a wonder. He used to say this body has some stem cells which are there. Now there is a technology where if you take those cells and place them in kidney, it will behave like kidney cells. This is what we call stem cell therapy. So that means those cells, if you place them differently, they can behave like differently. Their functions become different. Intelligent design. You have not created anything. We come in the world where everything is given. Your body is given. The world is given. Every other character, whether you like that character or not, you have to deal with that character, everything. The whole arrangement is there. And that intelligence makes what? That intelligence is what we call Ishvara. Sanskrit name, Ishvara. Where is that intelligence? Everywhere. As Namrata says, don't think about the presence of intelligence, which is what? Don't make it into submarine. Submarine means what? At the bottom. It is not at the bottom. It is where? At every level of organization there is that intelligence. The Upanishads have said, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. The whole Idam Sarvam means the Jagat is pervaded by what? Isha. That intelligence which brings into being what? Those tiniest particles and then organizes them in different permutations and combinations to make what? Different entities. But it doesn't only make different living entities. What about the rivers? What about the mountains? What about the planets? What about faraway galaxies? Same intelligence. Okay, that star over there, there is a one star which is what we call what? Dhruva. Dhruva is North Pole. So much of the rishis could figure out so much thing because everything was seen from the standpoint of what? This North Star. Dhruva.
This is seen from which point of
So,
view?
so many discoveries were made with reference to what? Astronomy and everything, with reference to the position of the sun. Position of the star. Okay. So therefore, the intelligence is not only organizing living beings, it is also organizing what? The cosmos, the entire cosmos in which you come. The sun, the moon, stars, galaxies, waters, mountains, everything. Right? And within that, what it makes, what? All the different interactions possible. Those interactions, even though they all happen within what? Dependent reality, are they all just random interactions? They are not random interactions. That's why you can't just dismiss mithya as something which is what? Non-existent. Okay? So therefore, it organizes our interactions with series of what? Laws. What are the laws? Yeah. There are so many laws that my interaction with yours is governed by so many different laws, not just karma and dharma. Right? There are some laws of physics. Can we transgress that? Can we? No. Any discovery that you want to make, you want to send a rocket in space, can you do it disregarding the laws of physics? You can't. You have to work within those laws. You have to understand how those laws work, and then what? Apply your intelligence to what? Use those laws to accomplish things. When the doctor goes to medical school, can the doctor decide whatever he wants to do? He has to study physiology, how this whole human body is put together. Only when you get the understanding, you have the capacity to what? Work within those laws. And if something has gone astray, you what? Try to bring it back. There are laws of physics, there are laws of physiology, there are laws of anatomy. That's why what happens is how yours and my lives get connected. When you go and complain to the doctor about, let's say, your eye or your ear, the doctor is seeing you for the first time, but the doctor has studied 1 year and the doctor has knowledge of what? Pretty much what? How the whole ear works. So they understand very well where could be the distortion and they try to correct it. Okay? Everybody works within the laws. There is nobody who can disregard laws. The modern day Vedanta tries to dismiss the world as illusion and does not bring into understanding this whole fabric of this mithya world, which is ingeniously put together by that intelligence. That intelligence also manifests as what? Psychological laws. Okay? There are certain laws of psychology. What are the laws of psychology? If somebody does something to you, you will feel in a certain way. You can't avoid it. What you can do is what? Put it in perspective. See the larger picture, and then what? The intensity is what? Reduced. And you can learn not to what? Operate from the strength of that emotion, but what? From your understanding. All that you can do. But you can't totally bypass what? The laws of psychology. You can't. In addition to all these different things, so that means our lives are connected through series of laws. That intelligence not only makes every form what it is, the intelligence also what? Connects all the different forms through series of laws. Then, in addition to all these laws, as Manonmani says, there are two more laws that Vedanta also talks about as manifestation. The laws, please understand, are not mechanical. They are manifestation of Ishvara. They are manifestation of this intelligence. That intelligence which is all pervading is organizing every form and its interaction with the world through series of laws. Law of dharma, same. There is a fabric which what? Governs my behavior with another person's behavior. Human being, because the human being comes with free will, the human being is also given certain basic understanding of dharma. I understand what is good for me. Okay, now. Right? So therefore, what I understand what is right for me. We have seen that before, so I don't want to spend too much time. And I also understand what then I don't want to be hurt, and equally you don't want to be hurt. So this is why, as Tara said, she is very clever. She answered the question better than me. She said, what? That you can't say you don't know that hurting is not good, because you always know it with reference to yourself. You can't say you don't know. You conveniently forget to apply it to somebody else. That is what work of your free will. So that means there is a fabric. That is what we call law of dharma. Then if you transgress dharma, then there is what? Consequence, cause and effect. There is a consequence, and that is taken care of by what? Law of karma. Okay, so mithya world is extremely intelligently put together. You can't just ignore it. Even the possibility of your learning Vedanta, in which world is it? You come to a teacher. It is where it is Atma who's learning? No, it is all happening in Mithya world. What are you using to understand what I'm saying? Your mind. Where is the entanglement? In the mind. Everything happens in Mithya only. So there is no way of eliminating Mithya Jagat. You can only understand it as Mithya, and if you are smart, what will you do? You will align, you will understand how it works, and you will align to it. That alignment is what we call Antahkarana Shuddhi. And behind that whole alignment, there is awareness of Ishvara. There is no alignment without Ishvara, because Ishvara is the manifestation which makes every object what it is and connects the presence of that object with every other object through series of laws. So therefore, how is Vedanta different from psychology? You have to answer this question in satsang. That's your job. Tara will answer. The whole alignment model of Vedanta is fundamentally different from the alignment that we talk about at psychological level. It incorporates that, but it is seen from a much bigger perspective. Namrata will answer. And that is what we call preparation. Without that preparation, Vedanta will remain a secret. Rahasyam. Okay, now I will stop. So now we will know a little bit more about Ishvara in the next class, and how is this Ishvara related to awareness. All this we still have to see. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.